So it's week one, and this is one of the first sessions we did for this week. It kind of, we didn't end up doing anything with it. It was more like putting ideas down, any sort of like styles that we wanted to do and test out. We put in this session. We ended up doing one in this, and then later on we actually created a full song, which we then, are going to progress with. But this one we started out, I've put this preset back in here. It was a mallet from Serum, which is a preset. You can tell it's kind of got a bit of delay that we didn't want. If I take all this off. So we came into here and we took off the delay. We added some channel EQ to make it less bright and less sort of, especially in those frequencies, they're very like high up. So we just wanted to dull them down a tiny bit. And then we added a Kickstarter, which is like it's like a sidechain without having to sidechain anything. So as you can see, the kick can do what it wants down here, and it will still do duck in a 4/4 pattern. So this is what it sounds like. Obviously we quieted it down. Then we added a lower version, which is just the chords drop down an octave, which fills it out. The same effects going on here, just the highs around 4,100 hertz, so just duck down a tiny bit. Then we added it again. I think it's even lower. And then we added a sub bass, just with all the highs taken off. We added a synth from Serum, which is the massive. Then added a kick. And a snap. My computer wants to run this. So this is actually our second track of the week, which is what we decided to carry on with. As you can see, it's pretty messy in here, but what we started out was the kick, which is just a 4/4 kick, which just has some reverb, which is for a bass. Then we added a hat, and then a deep house loop, which is a shaker. So top clap and bottom clap, just to fill it out a bit more, with reverb on through bus 4. And then a wub, which is was originally had a kick with it, but we took the kick out just to add some more rhythm. We did have originally another kick, which was like an 808 kind of kick, which is like low pass, high pass down here. Oh no, it is low cut. It is low cut, yeah. And then it comes in. But then the piano came in and it clashed, and it didn't sound right going through the chords. So we just have a Steinway piano here. My Kontakt library isn't loading for some reason, but we did have a Kontakt piano. Just playing some jazz chords. And then we had some hats, more hats in. This is a housey loop which we chopped up and then played it every 4. And that sounds like this together. add a riser here, just to transition. This was originally side chained in the dual sample we got, so we didn't need to add any Kickstarter to it. And then it fades down. Computer's really struggling to load any of these files because they're quite big and not bounced. The Steinway piano has the presets. We just left the presets and then took one off the second one, and then we added a saw pad from Serum, which is a preset that we manipulated, adding the piano stuff to it to make it fill out a tiny bit more. And everything comes, but the loops come back in. The shake is still there. And then the kick comes back in. Got a different kick, one that has no reverb on at all. Still playing those same chords, and then we get to the build up of the drop, which we are gonna have singing on. And lead on top, which is a bottle. Sub, and then some plucky chords from the DJ Snake pack that I bought, and then a sub bass that's playing that lead, and then the piano is then chopped, building up, and some claps to build up, and a kick again, and this is where it goes into the drop. We have a tiny fill, which is just a cowbell. And then we bring in the complex Serum presets and things that we've made, and it's got Kickstarter on. If we actually go in here, you can see that it was a screaming bass that we've manipulated. It looks like it originally was LFO'd to here, so if I put them back on, you can see that we then add this on later. There's a lot of different synths. There's a lot of dubstep kind of sounding synths in here, but they're mostly Serum, so my computer might crash like it did just a second ago when I was explaining the modulation that was originally on this, the LFO that was originally on here. I took it off again. These two layered together, and then side chain with Kickstarter, and then we have this preset here that was made with the distorted 8-bit, and then Monster. Let me show you this tiny bit here. Just plays a simple, it's very dubsteppy, and then a higher layer, and sidechain with Kickstarter. And then it comes on to the next part of it, which is then a different synth, which is a one from the start, and then we added it again. This time it was kind of like very LFO choppy, keeping the rhythm, and then the same with the bass. It comes back in, chopping all over the place, adding bits back in. Then another part of the Serum. It was all named Inix. We need to rename when we mix them so we know what they are, but just for the moment they're going to stay like that. Just one rising. If we go into the automation, there's a hell of a lot of automation on here. All these different elements. So as you can see, we've got the modulating synth here, changing. If I play them all together, my computer doesn't crash while I'm recording. Then we get to the next part, and it pretty much just extended for longer, and then we have it in the actual file here. If we go into the automation on the here, we can see that it's, where is it? We pitch bended it down in the last bit here slowly. We could even make that a bit more tighter using the curve tool here. We can make it a bit more bendy. We're making use of every bit of automation we can here for some reason, because we learn how to do it. Let me bring to the kicks. So start off with one kick, and then it is actually a preset kick, but we just chopped up, making it because it sounded good, and we wanted to leave it exactly how it was. And a clap, an impact when the actual rest of it comes in. Cymbals. It's a very bass house kind of vibe. And then another clap or snare, sorry. These are all from Splice. Very quiet, just add a bit of rhythm to it. Then some hi-hats. Very complicated drum beat, but everything you've heard before. And then if I play it all together, it sounds like this. Oh, that's not supposed to be played. Need to assist. And then a tiny automated synth here that's been high cut to rise up and just give a bit more impact to the next part. I think we did use these. I just forgot to put them in. These are the hi-hats. It's just a simple loop on the shaker. Then it comes back in with the chords and just the piano playing with the loop from the start. Doesn't like that piano at all. And then it just comes back in. Nothing really changes, we just drag it out for a bit longer. Pretty much the same throughout. This track was supposed to be simple, but we kind of made it a bit more complex because we didn't, when going into this, we didn't actually realize how difficult it would be making bass house, considering they sound so simple. But I guess that's the technique behind it, to make it as simple as possible, but make it complex at the same time. So if we're doing this again, we'd obviously give ourselves more time, because a week was definitely not long enough to do this. This track is still not finished, and we hope it doesn't have to go into the next week. So it's track 3. This is one of the ideas that we had that is not going to go on the album, but we might use on a later date. So we let me find this. So it's called Troy Boy because of the sound. We were going for this sort of track. Very funky, So we started off with a preset that was playing just the bass notes. And then we added another preset, which was a pluck. Then a steel pan, which we took off Splice, with some distortion, channel EQ, reverb. These have all got the reverb from bus 1. And the bass has got supercharger because then it gets sidechained to the kick later on. We then add some chords, which is sidechained by Kickstarter. And then literally just a sine wave that was off EX. It was actually a sample, but we can't find that sample anymore, so we kept it as that. It sounds good. With a kick, all really reverbed. All the reverb was actually already on there. Then it brings us to the pre-drop, which we added this bass. Very funky Electro Boy. Filtered out, and then we added, I don't know why it kicks there. We literally haven't even finished the drop for this, but we got an idea, which was that was going to be the drop. Kind of like a kind of vibe to it. I felt like this was actually a waste of time because we're probably not going to use this for this project, which means that we wasted about 2 hours on this, putting down ideas, but you know, it'll all eventually get somewhere, just not for this project. This week 2, and I started off the song with these bells, the intro bells. They sound like this. It's got a lot of reverb on it, on the actual Serum. It is a preset from the actual Serum pack called Epically, which we just added a tiny bit more reverb to and delay, ping pong delay, and then we bounced it out and reversed it so it gives a transition into the next part, which is technically the intro. We added an effects impact with a fade in to give it a less impact but still have a bit of white noise for the impact. Then it goes into these plucky chords played on a 4/4 rhythm. So if you go into Serum, so we manipulated it. This is from Splice. We manipulated it. When we first got it, it was quite low cut, so not much of the high end was coming through. So what we did was we moved the frequencies into the middle to give it a bit more oomph. And it did have delay on, but we removed the delay to keep it to a simpler rhythm. And then we added a pluck bass, which was from ES2. It's called a Fancy Synth because of the song Fancy by Charlie XCX and whoever it was by. They sound together like this. This plays for 2 bars until there's a lot of different synths. There's a lot of dubstep kind of sounding synths in here. But they're mostly Serum, so my computer might crash like it did just a second ago when I was explaining the modulation that was originally on this, the LFO that was originally on here. I took it off again. These 2 layered together, and then sidechained with Kickstarter. And then we have this preset here that was made with the distorted 8-bit, and then Monster. Let me show you this tiny bit here. Just plays a simple, it's very dubsteppy, and then a higher layer, and sidechain with Kickstarter. And then it comes on to the next part of it, which is then a different synth, which is the one from the start, and then we added it again. This time it was kind of like very LFO choppy, keeping the rhythm, and then the same with the bass. It comes back in, chopping all over the place, adding bits back in. Then another part of the serum. It was all named in it because we need to rename when we mix them, so we know what they are. But just for the moment, they're gonna stay like that. Just one rising. If we go into the automation, there's a hell of a lot of automation on here. All these different elements. So as you can see, we've got the modulating synth here, changing. If I play them all together, if my computer doesn't crash while I'm recording. Then we get to the next part, and it's pretty much just extended for longer, and then we have it in the actual file here. If we go into the automation on the here, we can see that it's, where is it? We pitch bended it down in the last bit here, slowly. We could even make that a bit more tighter using the curve tool here. We can make it a bit more bendy. We're making use of every bit of automation we can here for some reason, because we learn how to do it. Let me bring to the kicks. So start off with one kick, and then it is actually a preset kick, but we just chopped it up, making it because it sounded good, and we wanted to leave it exactly how it was. And a clap, an impact when the actual rest of it comes in. Cymbals. It's a very bass house kind of vibe. And then another clap or snare, sorry. These are all from Splice. Very quiet, just adding a bit of rhythm to it. Then some hi-hats. Very complicated drum beat, but everything you've heard before. And then if I play it all together, it sounds like this. Oh, that's not supposed to be played. Reverse it. And then a tiny automated synth here that's been high cut to rise up and just give a bit more impact to the next part. I think we did use these. I just forgot to put them in. These are the hi-hats. It's just a simple loop on the shaker. Then it comes back in with the chords and just the piano playing with the loop from the start. Doesn't like that piano at all. And then it just comes back in. Nothing really changes, we just drag it out for a bit longer. pretty much the same throughout. This track was supposed to be simple, but we kind of made it a bit more complex. Because when going into this, we didn't actually realize how difficult it would be making bass house, considering they sound so simple. But I guess that's the technique behind it, to make it as simple as possible, but make it complex at the same time. So if we're doing this again, we'd obviously give ourselves more time, because a week was definitely not long enough to do this. This track is still not finished, and we hope it doesn't have to go into the next week. So it's week 3, and I'm going to show you how we wrote Lo-Fi. We started off with actually this sample that we got off Splice. It's a music box. It's a one-hit sample. We decided to take that and then make a tiny intro. We were listening to a lot of Aries, so let me show you some Aries. Mellotron, sort of like 808s. So we wanted that kind of style. So we got a Mellotron out. We started playing some bass chords over it. It's 2 layers, one from EX, which plays the lower half. Kickstarter, tape delay, compressor. We don't have the Kickstarter till later on. We have it actually automated. And then bust with reverb and chorus. To create some more effects on it. Then we have a sub bass from Alchemy's Logic's own synthesizer, probably one of the best synthesizers in Logic, apart from like the third-party ones. We have Kickstarter on the bass, which is then automated later. Channel EQ to delete all the highs from it, so you get none of the gritty, horrible. I'll show you. So the loudness of the sub bass. So it's literally just sub, and that's mixed in. And then we have it. Let me just take all these vocals up for a sec. Top melody, which is also Mellotron flute. Most of the highs and lows taken out of it, so it's less ear piercing because it's quite high. Pedal board and amp, and then bust with loads of reverb. Let me take the effects off and show you. Just makes it sound a lot better and fit in more. Let's make it less muddy. And the Kickstarter comes in here. We also have one of Seb's vocal impacts. This is bounced out. I've actually lost the original, but it's a load of reverb, delay, octave high and octave low. And then Kickstarter on the Mellotron. Just adds more impact to so it sort of sets it apart, adds some more effects. And then we add some risers here with the vocal drop, and then the lead melody coming in, which then would be used for the drop. There's 2 octaves playing. And then before that we actually had a melody lined up to go in there, but we felt it was too dull. So we ended up, using that for the start, like you can see. Then it's the drop. We kind of went mellow for this, kind of like old school kind of trap. like Lewis and the Child, who I was researching, their kind of style. Slow Down Love, I think it's called. Sort of very just 808 kick clap. Obviously we've got a music box and they've got a Caribbean steel drums. So we added in the 808 first just to see if it would match. Kick, clap. Then we added some watery shakers and then normal shaker. They're half timed, so normally they're like this. We wanted them slower, a bit sloppier, so we add that under the bass, following the bass. Then we added it an octave higher for the next bit. And then the hi-hats, just simple, just to fill in the gaps. And then a glockenspiel, which is a synthesizer over the top here. And it goes straight back in to the verse. The hi-hat's still going. I think they're 4/4 or 1/1/8. No, 4/4, yeah. Then it adds we add the mellotron back in, and then we added a snare on top. We did originally have that in the start, but I took it out because I didn't like it. Then we have the watery shaker come back in. And then we have a lead, which is my favourite. It's Serum's epic lead. This really added a sort of like 80s sort of like house kind of vibe to it. So we have that coming in now. Build up again. Didn't even show you the build up drums. So we have a clap, snare, tambourine, snare again. Oh, that's for the, one second, that's for the drop, never mind. So we have a snap at the end here. It's sort of slowly building up with the clap, hi-hats, and then we have a bongo fill at the end just to transition into the drop better. The tambourine, and another snare. Same again here, but instead of adding the music box on its own this time, we added the mellotron, but we chopped it like a future bass sort of synth. And added the kick back in. The 808. In, which is my favourite part of the song. Just ending high pass, just at a different transition to previous endings we've used. So we're just stopping, it sort of slowly fades out and stops. Very chilled out track. So next let's get to the vocals. Which we are planning to re-record in later weeks. We have Seb on the S3B.
Blacked out honey on the couch, last minute come around, cause I know that I like that. Drove a couple 100 miles now, cause I miss you.
So we have a EQ, just taking out some of the lows, some of the highs, some of the breathy areas. Then we also have it again, but I've lowered it in pitch. Oh no, this is a reverb track, sorry. This is a heavily reverb track. Just taking out some more of the lows, just so it mixes well.
Blacked out honey on the couch, last minute come around, cause I know that I like that. Drove a couple 100 miles now, cause I miss you. Yeah, honey on the couch.
I've chopped it in certain areas where he would breathe or he would make a certain noise or sniff, just to clean up the recording. Then we added, or Seb added when he sung over it, certain areas where we could emphasize it. So we added low octaves and high octaves. Harmonies.
On the couch last minute come around, cause I know that I like that. Drove a couple 100, miss you, yeah. Girl, I need you. Blacked out.
It sounds like this.
Girl, I need you. Blacked out, honey on the couch last minute come around, cause I know that I like that. Drove a couple 100 miles now, cause I miss you, yeah. Girl, I need you.
Comes back in on the chorus.
Stop, wait a minute. Let me figure out what the fuck is this about. All you do is fucking shout. No, all the drugs I've taken from those fucks I used to play with from the day I thought I made it. No, saying that I faked it. No, no.
More harmonies at the top here. We basically layered and cut certain areas to make the track. It was originally quite quiet when he recorded it, even though the mic was loud enough. Compared to the rest of the track, it's not fully mixed yet. I plan to mix this tonight, and then I'll re-record, showing you how I've mixed it. But I planned for them to be a lot more harmonies, but turned out some of the harmonies that we recorded at the time I didn't realize were flat. And even with pitch correction and me actually editing the actual audio, it just didn't sound very good. So that's one thing I take back from this week, is I'd make sure that all of the recordings are in key, so that we don't have to redo it or remix it or take some stuff out that I liked. Yes, this is this week. And this is how I wrote what we're calling at the moment Whack-A-Mole. So it started off with a pluck. This is from Sylenth. Then made these chords, added a lower octave version of it. It's got preset delay on it. We didn't really mess with the preset that much, sort of left how it is. We added a sub bass underneath it. That is Logic. Oh, no, Sylenth subwave. I think it's a Moog type bass. We then added a lead, the ARP. This is one of Sylenth's Key the Source. We just put arpeggiator on it on here, and delay and reverb. It sounds like this. It's following the same chords, just stretched out longer. We added a lead, which is also Sylenth. And then another one here from Serum. with spreader. It's got distortion and other effects in here. Compressor. This is inspired, which we messed with. Very sort of Japanese, sort of like kawaii, kind of that style of music. We've got a small riser going into the verse, and a kick, shaker, snare, and clap with a double clap. Together it sounds like this. Just following the chords, the kick is following the chords. It's a very happy song, very summery. Kind of tried to make this one stand out a bit more because we have a similar song which we made last week, which is kind of the same feel, but we wanted this one to stand out as being different and you know, a completely different genre to the one before. It's in the same bracket of EDM genre, but it's two separate sides, the Japanese side and sort of like the American, English, Australian kind of flume style drop. So you've got a simple riser going up with the melody changing a tiny bit. Then we have a flume pad. It's not flume, but it's like a simple saw wave with the filter on it that's cutting off some of the highs, and then spreader. It's following the same chords. And then it's got a low pass filter going up, and then Space Designer. And then for the build up, we have the kick and the clap and snare coming in, but in different rhythms. We also have a clock, which is from Splice, and then another riser that's been side chained. We also have an automation on the stereo out, which would low cut the frequencies as it's going up for the drop. For the drop, we use a hell of a lot of synths. They're pretty much the same synths, just like different stuff has been done to them. Different playing octaves just to make it sound bigger and better. We have some like classic feature bass, pluck synths. And we have a snare and an 808. I'll play the snares first. 2 layered snares. No effects on them at all, it's dry because I had reverb on them already. The 808. We did have distortion on it, but it was a bit much. So we just compressed it, which I decided to not use the supercharger that I recently got, just because the compressor, it was compressing too much, so we decided to stick with the Logic compressor and sidechain it through there. And the same with the rest of the track, the rest of the drop, sorry. So we have the kick, the drop kick. Oh, it's messed up because of the automation. A tom and a fill here. Then one of our favourite bits to do was the wub, or the wom as we called it. So we have a sort of like that sort of sound. I don't know what that is. It just sounded good. And the woms pitch shifted. The toms. pitch shifted up and down. Then the sub drop, which is from Splice, Kashmir. Together that sounds good. And then we have little bits of arpeggiated stuff all over the place. It's like harp, it's like a game sound. Together it sounds like this. And at this point we have the lead melody coming back in, but in D lead, which is like an epic lead from Serum, I believe. With the ARP coming back in there. And then we have it chopped at the end to make the song ending a bit cleaner, because before we had it stopping and it didn't really work the same way as we wanted it to. So we decided to chop everything, including the kick, snare, and the lead. Oh, the lead is chopped. And then a reverb snare at the end, just to make that impact harder. And then back to the intro, or the verse, and then we have all the drums coming back in, but it flows a bit better because it's got this LFO sort of like synthesizer coming in. And that's automated upwards with the low pass. We've got 2 of them, and that will go up straight back to the next chorus, which we then had automated. Where's the automation? Oh, it's because it's bounced. We had the future bass synths coming in slowly before hitting, so it all like fades down and comes up with a big explosion. So this is week 5. I'm going to show you how we wrote Burning with Guileless. So we started off with a preset called Relentless. We didn't mess with this, we just EQ'd it, and then we added a lower layer to make it fill out. We then added some white noise. And then on top of that, just 2 synths playing similar melodies. And then a distorted bass string that I've manipulated from a preset on here called Bass Vintage Strings. I just added put unison on with 32 voices and that legato and glides, and then it creates this beefy leads that's like, sounds really distorted. It's nice. EQ'd again to take some of the bass out. Then we get to the pre-chorus or the build-up, and we added a few more things. So we added this melody, which then will be used in the drop, and using the same plucked lead, so higher and lower. We added some snares. Just to build the rhythm, a kick. These are all from Splice. Big impact from Kashmir's preset pack on Splice. And then just playing. A riser. All of these kits are untouched except from the kick, which we added distortion to make it beefier. Then we added some brass for the build-up, which is then filtered with automation. Just going up. We added some Space Designer, some compressors on them. There's like 4 layers of this synth. One of them was a sample from Splice, and then one of them is actually a synthesizer, which is this one from Sylenth, which we didn't mess with at all except from on the effects chain. Brass has got distortion on. This is the EXS2 one, the sampler. It's got a bus with more Space Designer because I don't know why we didn't put it on the bus on this one. Then we added some more impacts, and all together with the build up some of this. We also added an Andrew Huang impact, which is quite eerie and sort of spacey. Then for the drop, we added the brass in. Very trap style, like very hard hitting brass. Kick. A snare. These are all presets from, samples from Splice. Most of them are from the Lex Luthor kit, the kit and the Graves kit, I believe. And then my favourite bit of the whole song, the actual 808. I also added some reversed kick, which is from the Graves one, just reversed, bounced then reversed. And so it doesn't clip, we use the fade tool on the ends just to make it a bit smoother. You can't really see it, but it's there. And then the impacts, the Kashmir sweeps, we added them all over. The melody comes back in here, and we also changed the brass melody at the end here with the kick changing to a 4/4 kick, and so the bass and the hi-hats going mad. It all comes back in, and then we have a verse this time instead of just like a build-up, which is kind of hip-hoppy, kind of trap. So we have I'll start with the hi-hats. Kick, also the snare, the open hi-hat, and the 808, which is sort of like a different 808. Where is it? There it is. It's more of a softer one, a proper like old school 808 with the kick following that rhythm. We took a lot of inspiration from Drolo's tracks. Let's see if I can find it. Hear that? That's sort of like kick and bass clashing. It sounds nice. Then the melody comes back in, so we've got the whole verse here. Straight back into build up with the brass going back in. Build up. The risers. this drop, we decided to take a different route, and we tried to make it as hybrid trap as we could, but not overdo it in a way. So we have it dropping as brass again, but instead of going to an 808, it goes to a distorted blarp preset from Serum, which then we distorted even more with clip distortion and then supercharge it so it's sidechain with the 808 as well, with the kick. So that sounds like this. Carry on with the brass. It pretty much stays like that for the end. The added of hi-hats and trills. So now to move on to the vocals. So we have Guy's fuzz vocals here. We shifted them down 12 octaves with the region transpose unit up here. We pedalboard it with fuzz. It loads with Double Dragon deluxe overdrives. We compressed it, channel EQ'd it so it would take out some of the lows and highs, so it would mix in. Then we've got Guy's vocals.
There's a fire burning in your eyes.
On these buses we have Space Designer, that doesn't need to be on there, channel EQ, another Space Designer. They're both different. Sample delay, tape delay, and chroma. That sounds like this. And then the fuzz again added back in.
And I don't understand why it's killing me.
And together this sounds like this.
It's killing me. It's killing me. It's killing me. Killing me. It's killing me now.
It was the end of week 6, and I'm gonna go through my Logic file and explain what I did, and why I did it. So I started off, me and Guy sat down. We started with some chords. I started off F, A, D, and then I think it was a B major 7th. So I started off with some bass piano. I then started EQing. I got this preset gritty piano. Then I boosted some more of the highs. Took some of the highs around 10k out, and then lows of the bass because I didn't want it to be muddy. Then I did the same piano, but then a higher part of it, which would then turn into the melody. So I'll show you the top piano at the start. Pretty simple chords. Then a tiny bit of delay on it. Tiny bit delay, and then supercharger that would be used later for the sidechain. I'll show you that in a second. It's from the Contact. It is the Gentleman. And that's the high piano. Just playing a simple melody. I then grabbed a glide lead from Reactor. It was a preset. I literally didn't mess with anything inside that preset because I'm not that sure how to work this. But what I did do was add a little effects to it. So it was originally quite gritty, quite muddy. I went into the EQ. I put pad warmer on it, and then I took some more of the lows out and boosted some of the mid range. It then added Silver Verb, user default, which is I actually created this. This is was then used later on the vocals in the bus. Ensemble, another preset I made, again used later in the vocal. Some flanger. I just moved the intensity up and the mix down, and the rate on 0.4. Any more would make it kind of like go out of tune a tiny bit, and then supercharger later for the kick and side chain. On the bus, since the piano is not its bus, I don't know why it's there. All that together. It's pretty much stays the same until I add the sub for the chorus and a harder hitting piano. This is the same chords that we used at the start, just I moved up the velocity a tiny bit and then changed the EQ. I still took out, you know, some of the bass, but I boosted a tiny bit more, around 240 hertz, just to get a tiny bit of bass in it, but not so much that it would then disrupt the actual sub bass that I'd add in. Then I added the sub. This is actually Logic's just preset. Oh no, it's not. I forgot. It's the Kontakt. It's right down the bottom. It's the Contrary Factory selection. That is it's just an analog emulation of a sub bass, and it's got a bit more tone to it. I added supercharger and then EQ. I just took a tiny bit of the low out, high cut it, so that it wouldn't clash with the kick that would later come in. I added the glider back in, the Fallout lead. Moving on, I've got some slow rising pianos that's just reversed, and the same with the lead, just to add a bit of effects or transition to the next part of the song. It's quite nice. It just for the next chorus, I wanted to go a bit bigger. I still have the same piano, but this time it's sidechained to that kick that you'll hear. I added the glide lead back in, and then I added a favourite, future bass kind of like chords. What it is it's not a preset, I don't think. If it is a preset, I've messed with it. No, it's my own. What it is, I'll quickly show you how to make it on a new track. You add oscillator 1 and you turn up the unison. If you have a good CPU, turn up the unison to 16, which I did. Both of them on, then detune them a tiny bit on either side. Oops. Damn, it's loud. Then you basically have your future bass saw. What you can do is you can then filter out, and that emulates kind of like a wobbling effect. I then added some EQ to it. I used a cleanup organ because I always use this when I'm making future bass. I originally had it so I was boosting in this range. I was actually boosting it up so that I'd get a more cleaner sound, but then that was affecting the strings and the vocals. It was just getting too muddy, so I had to take that out. So in the end it sounds pretty clean. And then I later added sidechain and some more EQ because I realized that I needed to boost some of that area because it was sounding a bit too bassy. Then I've got a bus with nothing on it, I don't know why. So together, at the moment, with everything in the piano back in, it sounds like this. I wanted to add some strings in because I knew I was going to do a strip version by this point. I was talking to Guy and I wanted to do a strip version where it's just orchestral and that's coming on his EP and not ours. We then added some just bass string chords, just following the same as a future bass with the added 7th and 9ths. We added a harmony, with portamento on it. These are from the contact string selection. There it is, there's the portamento. All these strings have the same EQ on them. They're pretty much the same as the future bass chords because I kind of like that. But then they've got, in the actual contact, they've got built-in reverb and effects on there, which comes preset with it, and I didn't want to change that. They've also got supercharger onto sidechain, same. The supercharger is actually sidechaining pretty hard, but it doesn't sound like it. Then we have the sub coming back in. This time it's got some extra bit added in. I've also added another bass, but this time it's clip distorted, so it's pretty beefy, but you can't really hear it when it's actually mixed in. Next to the drums, which there isn't actually that much, I don't know why they're at the bottom. There's the reverse kick they use. It just adds a bit more pump to the kick when it hits. The kick is a sample I got of Splice. It's got most of the highs taken out and then bounced with chroma verb to make it sound like an orchestral kick, so it hits harder. Then I didn't use a snare, I actually used a wood block, I think. That's just got chroma verb. It's got spreader, and then it's put for the silver verb that it's also used for the vocals. And then I took most of it out because if you listen to it without this on, it's pretty, can't really hear it, but it softens it a tiny bit and makes it stand out less, because I didn't want it actually standing out loads in the song. I just wanted it to be there for rhythm purposes, to keep the bounce of the song, to keep it moving. I added an impact, the virtual riot impact from Splice, and I took most of the highs out and some of the bass because it's quite rumbly. It's an impact. Together that sounds like this. Without the vocals and everything, the chorus sounds like this. Then I'm going to move on to the vocals, which we did last, because we were there writing the song with Guy, but we didn't have any lyrics at this point. I'm sure Guy explains what his lyrics are about. So we start off, I'll show you the dry version. It's recorded with the same mic I'm using now. This is it dry.
Can you help me understand why you feel the need to tell me?
So first of all, I added some pitch correction. That's we read to Guy. I just felt like it needed a bit of help with the pitch.
Can you help me understand?
Not too much. It's in the F key, the major scale. I added some EQ. As you can see, I've taken out most of the lows, most of the bass, because Guy's got quite a deep voice. For men with deep voices, you normally take the lows out so it doesn't mess with any of the frequencies in the area that your instruments are at. I removed some of the highs, some of the breathy areas, like the 10k areas. As you can tell without it, it's quite breathy. I added a compressor. And then I did add a de-esser, but I found like the de-esser was kind of like squishing it too much. I don't know why it sounded like that. There we go. So I added, on the first bus, I added a compressor. I've got presets for Guys now. With the compressor, it just beefs it up a tiny bit, makes it louder.
Me understand why?
And then it makes all the without the obviously sliders, it makes all the vocals sound the same volume, and then it helps when it gets to the chorus. Then I added a sample delay, tape delay, and ensemble. These are all presets that I've made for Guy.
Can you help?
I haven't got it active at the moment on this one, but I do at the chorus. what I did was on each vocal I recorded one vocal, then I added all the effects to it instead of doing it after. Then I copied and pasted it down so that for each track I'd have it ready for Guy's vocal to be on.
Help me.
I then added another bus with sample delay and tape delay again, but this time it's going at a different rate and it's quieter with chroma verb just to help that area. Then added a fifth bus with silver verb. This is the preset I was talking about that I used on the strings. This just makes it suit the song a bit more. Let's get to the chorus and then I'll get to the different layers I've added. I pitch corrected this a bit more because this is a bit harder for Guy to sing without it. I'll show you.
I don't feel the same way about you.
It was really stretching and testing his voice. We did think about lowering the pitching the song down a tiny bit, but we felt like it needed to be in this key because we liked how it sounded. So with the effects, I added the delay in.
I don't feel the same way about you.
Then I added a higher version of Guy singing it. This is heavily auto-tuned because Guy struggles to sing high.
Can you just help me out?
I then added a higher pitched up 12 semitones. Pretty sure.
I don't feel the same way. I don't feel the same.
I really don't know what I did there. Oh, that's panned to the right, the same as this. Where is it? The same as this. This must have been. Oh no, I don't know why I did that. This is the lower one. That's 12 semitones down. I just added some extra stuff to this. The same compressor, just a bit more auto-tuned. And then together it sounds like this. It's the same here.
I can't be the big.
Then I added a higher version here. For the last chorus, we wanted to add a few more harmonies and little details. So I made Guy shout into the mic. I think it's pa or ba.
Huh?
Oh, it's ha. And I then put all these effects on it as an impact, and then did 3 different octaves. So I did higher and then lower. And then that hits after. Oh, I can't remember. It hits just after or just before the snare. Then we get to the harmony section. Just a higher and lower of Guy doing the harmony. And then it fading off with strings and then Guy's vocal. And that is how I made About You with Guy Ellis. Week 6, and I'm going to show you how I mastered About You and all the other tracks that we're posting to our EP. So I have a separate effects chain to what Kobe will be doing, considering we've had to mix and master the songs separately. So what I've got and what I started with was an EQ, a phase EQ, which I then took out some of the lows, some of the muddy areas that we don't need in a track, some of the highs, and then some of the bass, because this track was kind of, even though it was an acoustic track, it still had quite a lot of bass in, especially in the end with the kick. So I took that out. Then I added an exciter, which just sort of highlighted key frequencies around 5,300 hertz, and just boosted the harmonics a tiny bit, 7.2%. And I did that without the actual signal, dry signal on. Sort of here. It's kind of made a big difference to the song. It sort of brightens the song up. Then I added a multipressor instead of actual compressor, because with a compressor you can compress certain frequencies and change which frequencies you want to compress. So I boosted some of the highs. So I was compressing the highs a bit more, considering how much the kick was hitting some of the mids, and then I brought some of the the high end up around 10k to 20k, because that area was kind of lacking in signal. I then added a spreader, which sort of in that low area, in that high area again, I just needed to boost that signal. So without these, you can hear a big difference in that sort of area. And then I limited it with the adaptive limiter, which is better than the actual other limiter because it has more freedom in what you can do. I'm just boosting the gain, and then the outsealing by minus 0.1 dB, and then the look ahead at 50. I'm going to show you how I mastered Blacked Out by us and Seb. So I have a preset master chain, which I just applied from the last one I did, About You. And I'm going to change something. I found that online, if you master all your tracks together, it keeps a consistent sound throughout the whole of the EP, which makes everything sound the same level, basically. If you mix everything the same, and then keep it consistent throughout the mastering sessions, then your EP is going to sound pretty good. So I started off with an EQ. I took some of the mid-range out, because this track, because it's using a Mellotron, it's quite inconsistent in its sound. I boosted some of the bass because this was lacking a bit. I took some lows and highs out like I did before. I added an exciter, which around the 3,100 hertz range. I boosted the harmonics by 6.48%, as you can tell. This is the dry signal, and the dry signal off. As you can tell, it boosts that tiny little range there. Without it, with it, you can sort of hear it. I can hear it. You probably can't hear it through the microphone, but with the EQ, you can definitely hear it. I added a compressor. I compressed some of the highs, I compressed some mid-range, compressed the around the 2k and 5k hertz, and then I upped the 10 to 20k in that low range, just to in that high range, just to make that come through a bit more. I added spreader. The spreader stayed the same from the last track. It didn't need moving. And then I also added a limiter to boost it and make it louder. So this is my mastering session of Burning with GE Music. I'm going to show you how I mastered it and what I did, and how I changed the preset that I made from the last two songs that I mastered. So first of all, I took the EQ. I took out loads of the low because when I mixed this song, it was perfectly mixed, it was fine, just the lows were a bit too much, so I just needed to fix that. I took out some highs and some lows. I had an exciter. This one was around, if you turn it on here, it was around 870, just to boost the middle section, and the harmonics at 7.22%. I then added the multipressor. I compressed the lows pretty high, the mids pretty high, and then the same again with the highs. I just boosted them a tiny bit so they come up into the mix a bit more. With the spreader, it's the same as every other song, just spreading that low section, and then with the limiter, it limits exactly the same. With all of that, it just creates a better master, louder. My master session of time. I'm gonna start off with showing you just the mixed version. So I instantly knew that I wanted to take some of that bass out with the EQ, which is what I did, and then some of the high end just to take out, and then low cut it and high cut it. For the exciter, I wanted to boost around this range, the 5,300 hertz range, just because the bass was sort of sucking in that area, and it needed boosting. I then compressed it, compressing the lows, the mids, the high mids, and then the bringing down up the highs, just to fill in that space. I put spreader on. Spreader hasn't changed throughout the 4 tracks that I've mastered, and then limit has also not changed, and altogether it sounds like this. So as you can see, it just makes it a lot louder, a lot cleaner, and puts through some stuff that you wouldn't be able to hear normally.